Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to 1% Better, where we take a look at hidden stories in sport. I'm Xylon, and I'm joined as always by Dr. David Lipman. Oh, I've got a good medical question for you actually this week. Let's see if medical school all those years paid off. What
Probably
is the
not.
medical term for a nosebleed?
Epistaxis.
How the hell do you know this stuff? I mean, when last did you go to medical school? Like, when would you have learned this?
You don't. I don't know if there's a day where they teach you that specifically, but you hear it in passing, or like people will talk about it. I don't know, like you learn it in the emergency rotation or something like that. Like I don't know. I really
But
don't know, man.
But my
But
point is, you're not practicing anymore. How do you still retain that information? That is insane, man.
I mean, it's like anything. Like you haven't done stuff in years and you remember something, right? So like it just depends on what it is, how well the memory's ingrained, what it's attached to. It's actually a really interesting book that I read many years ago called Moonwalking with Einstein. And it's about this guy who wants to improve his memory and goes to the World Memory Championships and learns all the techniques and how to do it. And that starts to teach you bits about memory. And so, generally, what happens is you kind of have like you have to remember something as a starting point, and then from there you can attach things and build out from there. So, like you may, I don't know, you start to like remember a single fact, and then you can build out from there. And so yeah, it's really cool. I like the way the brain works and that sort of stuff. So yeah,
Wow.
epistaxis, mate. Don't get one.
I am so impressed, man. So impressed.
Also, fun fact: tampons work really well in a sporting context to stop a nosebleed.
I think I've seen that, and obviously that checks out. Makes total sense.
Yeah,
Same kind of setup.
I mean, you get to say that. I don't get to say that. So
We are supported by Precision Fuel and Hydration. Thank you so much for being our day ones. Oh, we got one of their pro athletes coming on today, Lisa Weightman. She's a professional marathon runner. She's about to line up for Sydney Marathon, and she joins us courtesy of Precision Fuel and Hydration. She'll be here to talk about how she dials in her nutrition and hydration based on the climate she is competing in. So we discuss that. And because we are such amazing, good-looking, funny, handsome people, we've got a discount code for you, 15% off on your first purchase. That discount code is OPB2025. We also have a direct link in the show notes down below, so make sure you click on that. I said to you, I'm being impressed by you. You're amazing, apparently. How are you doing otherwise?
great, mate. Now, especially after that, I'm doing really well, mate.
Do you know
Yeah,
why I'm being so nice to you? We got a friend of mine. Shout out to Ishan Barner. He posted to our triathlon group this morning last week's episode with Christy Storichuk that is doing super well.
yeah, that is
And
flying.
someone, Christine Harding, commented on the WhatsApp group saying some of us just tune into 1% Better to Years Island getting roasted. So I'm being super nice to you this week so that you don't roast me.
And I mean, just so people are aware, that doesn't stop. Like, that's just our relationship. It's very authentic. We got on a call before. You were eating something, and I said, "Oh, did you microwave it?" And it was, it was warm food. So like, that's a good insight into it. So, but no, mate, I'm doing really well. Got home from the mountains over the weekend. I did a really nice, like a solid run Sunday. I was flying. Finally saw my critical power. So shout out to Stride. That finally started going back up. I tagged you in it. I put it on social, put it on that. We can put it up on the screen here. So we'll do that. And yeah, it went from 314 to 322 watts. And yeah, if you look at it, what you can see from that run, you can see the block or the power duration curve and on my critical power there. And you can see from 28 to 90 minutes was where this run impacted that, which is right in that zone of where critical power becomes a relevant factor. So you can see it there. You can see I really held it there for, yeah, it's like an hour of impact on that curve, so to speak. So that's cool. It's cool to see that. I ran well, felt great, was super easy. Was like low RPE run and flying along, pretty low heart rate, and yeah, ran pretty fast on it. So that was good. Like feel better about myself in that respect, in how the running's going. But let's see. Not counting any chickens before they're hatched and anything like that. But in other news, mate, I'm heading to UTMB. Got a press pass and everything. So if you're going to be there, I actually have to leave just before the race starts. But
Did you
if
get a
you are
press
there,
pass based off of this podcast?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow, we're the real deal, man. This thing is
Yeah.
growing up, man.
Yeah, yeah. But so if you're a listener and you're going to be there, feel free to flick me a DM. We'll try and catch up. I'm going to almost mandate that it has to happen at Moody, but we'll see. Maybe we get a run going as well. So let me know if you are there, like slide into my DMs and we can catch up. What about you, mate? How are you doing more importantly, now that you're sort of back rolling along? I mean, you had a terrible weekend of sport, but other than that, how are you doing?
Physically, I feel like I've regressed a bit, and I think that is the back journey. It is not linear. Mentally, I'm still handling it okay. I'm trying to figure out why I've been in so much pain lately. Um, but still managing to work with the bio and get really good strength work in. So that's encouraging, getting the blood pumping again. Um, he put me on that. Is it an air bike? Do you know what I'm talking about? What do you call
Airdyne bike, yeah, yeah. Or
Oh,
it's so Airdyne is the brand, and they're Assault Bike is what
assault
the
bike? That's it. That's what it's
yeah.
called. Man, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Like whenever I
Oh,
warm up
it's
on that thing, it is
brutal.
brutal. Oh,
I remember seeing previous guest Grant Jenkins do a maximal effort. I think it was 30 seconds or a minute, like absolute maximal effort, and just be an absolute puddle, a mess for ages. Like if you truly, this is where people misunderstand things. Again, back into the health versus performance and realms, like a truly maximal effort, not like, oh, I went hard. Like that is the hardest I could go, gun to my head. There's no harder. You are torched. And for a while, it's not something where you can go like, oh yeah, I can do that 10 times and do that multiple times a week. You will really struggle if you went truly maximally. It is brutal.
yeah. They say the bar said to me, even his fitter clients, doesn't matter how fit they are, it just kills you
Well,
always and
it's
forever.
because it's full body, basically. It's upper body and lower body. It's really tough. Like, yeah, yeah. The highest VO2 maxes recorded are generally in cross country skiing for the same reason. It's upper body and lower body. And that amount of muscle mass
Okay.
creates a huge metabolic requirement and load, and yeah, it's brutal. But mate, I heard something about you learning how to tie shoelaces as well. What's the story there? First day?
I'm only 40 years old and still learning things. So he was teaching me how to tie my shoelaces yesterday, and I'll tell you
What
why.
did he use bunny ears and not, or did he use loop, swoop, and pull?
Bunny ears through the loop, pulling it back towards the ankle, and then tying it properly. But I'll tell you why. It's because of my back issues. I'm not allowed to walk barefoot. So I have running shoes on all day, every day from the moment I wake up. So obviously, you get lazy and you just have slip on shoes that you slip in, slip out. And I wore my running shoes to the gym like that. They were tied, but they weren't perfect. And he was like, can you see the workout we're doing, the step ups we're doing here? Your foot and your shoe isn't making one motion because your shoelaces aren't actually tied properly. And then he was showing me to tie my shoelaces properly. And after he did that, my shoe immediately, I could tell the difference, took on a new shape. So I sort of messaged you and said, is there a technique to, this sounds really rudimentary, but is there a technique to tying shoelaces, and is this important? Because you as a podiatrist would for sure have insight on this.
Yeah, so the answer is there are many ways to tie shoelaces for different reasons. Shoelaces make a huge difference. They exist for a reason. They're pretty inefficient, so they wouldn't have persisted if they didn't actually make a difference. There are shoes without them, right? On has got the light spray that doesn't have shoelaces. But if you talk to people who are on athletes, they will say things like, yeah, if I run on a camber, right? So camber is like a slant, an angled road, like you fall off the side of the shoe. So if you think about the role of the upper of the shoe, right? So if we talk about the shoe's got a number of components. You got the outsole, that's the grip. You got the midsole, that's where the magic happens. That's between the grip and your foot. You got the inner sole, which sits inside the shoe. And then you have the upper, right? The upper is about holding your foot on the shoe. Now, in flip flops, yeah, that's not very. You have to do some work with your toes. This is actually why some sports clubs in Australia ban flip flops because it creates work at the foot to hold them on, and it can create problems in itself. But with the upper of the shoe, it's meant to hold you on there, and the laces do a key part of that. And then there's other parts of the upper as well. Is it single piece? Is it multiple piece? Where are the seams? Because those seams can create pressure points and issues. Because at a stitch point, you're not going to have a lot of give, whereas you'll have give around that. And so, similarly with the laces, if you skip a loop, you can reduce tension. You can lace them differently to have different amounts of tension. You can create all sorts of things to lock you in better. So, I say all that to say there's no one answer to how best to tie your shoes, but tying them is important, much to the dismay of many people. That's not to say that walking around if you've got a pair of casual shoes and they're not particularly well tied as you walk around day to day, it's probably not a big deal. But if you want to train in them, yeah, you need to tie those things for sure, particularly if you're going to be trying to do stuff on one foot or change directions or anything like that. So if you're not tying your running shoes properly, you're missing a beat. And if you're in the gym with loosely tied shoes and trying to do stuff with your lower body, probably missing a beat as well.
I was today years old when I learned that. I'll continue being a guinea pig to our audience, our listeners, and be the idiot so that we can all learn things together. And I'll be the one taking the punches. By the way, we've had an influx of new listeners. We'd like to welcome you all and for joining us, and we really, really appreciate you. But if you are listening for the first time and you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so now. We drop a new episode every single Friday, and coming up on next week's episode, we have probably one of the most important interviews I think we've ever had on this podcast. We've got one of the pro cyclists who has just completed the Tour de France FAM avec Zwift, and she went through an eating disorder, and it's something that she would really, really like to highlight and help other athletes who might be headed on a similar journey. So yeah, we'll have that out next week. So make sure you subscribe to the pod. Should we get to some community shoutouts?
Well, pretty much all for Brett Goldfinch this week. By chance, they've all stacked up. So he commented on last week's Spotify episode. Great pod this week, fellas. I love nerding out on these deep dives into human performance. Perfect treadmill fodder. So we appreciate that. I was actually going to shout him out this week because he's got the Barossa Marathon in a couple of days' time. So he will be running it this weekend the time of dropping. So best of luck, Brett. You're probably not going to hear this before then, but maybe you will. He is based in Australia, so he will get this episode. It'll be late Friday, so he may listen to it Saturday as he rests. But anyway, best of luck to Brett. We'll keep an eye on that. He also won in his taper last weekend, won the Granite Island 10K, running 39 minutes. So he's obviously South Australian down there running the Barossa Marathon. It's a good wine region. And so, yeah, let's see how he goes.
Have you spent enough time there on whether Brett may or may not listen to this episode? Do you want to spend another 30 seconds or minutes on that maybe? It's really, really good radio, I must say.
Oh, sorry, mate.
That was very Australian.
Not all of us have worked in radio, mate. I'm just trying I'm being authentic here. You should try it.
No, I love seeing how your brain works.
Also wanted to shout out Steve Bullock, who won his age group at the South Sea Park Run. So we've chatted to Steve before, or chatted about Steve before. So wanted to shout him out there. So congratulations, Steve. Park Run Ws are hard to pick up.
If you have any questions for us, by the way, you can send it to us on DM on Instagram. We are on 1% Better Pod. That is our handle. We also have an email address, which is down in the show notes below. We got a DM in from Jack Farlow, who said, I'm also wondering, maybe for the pod, how do you interpret warm-up heart rate? For example, usually I warm up at 5:30 pace. Some days my heart rate is like 118. Some days it's 135. I like to see low, but could that lack of response be signaling fatigue? Oh, good question.
Yeah, so Jack, for those who don't know, Jack is he's competed at the CrossFit Games. He is a CrossFit athlete, or a whatever you want to call those competitive fitness races. He's done some high rocks as well. Very powerful, big unit, working on his endurance.
I see in his profile picture here, he does have a shirt allergy.
Well, you can tell him that, mate. He's big lad from up in Canada. So actually caught up with Jack this week. He's a good guy. So he's a future guest. We just need to find something to talk to him about. And he's got a comp coming up. So best of luck in that comp, Jack. But warm-up heart rate is funny. I'm not so worried about warm-up heart rate because there are so many factors that affect it. There is certainly merit in tracking morning, like waking, resting heart rate and heart rate variability to understand preparedness. But heart rate in general, not necessarily warm-up heart rate, can give some signal as well. Now, warm-up is warm-up, and the goal is to sort of get moving and see how you go. But I'm not convinced that the warm-up heart rate is relevant. I think your heart rate for your work sets is more relevant. So the reason is, in general, heart rate is multifactorial. So one of the things to consider is caffeine intake. That's going to spike heart rate or lift heart rate. Heat will lift heart rate. Dehydration will lift heart rate, right? So all those things will affect your heart rate, as will altitude and those sort of factors. So generally what you should have is a normal range. This goes for probably waking heart rate, and then to some degree, probably exercising heart rate. So you should have a good idea of where it should be. right? You should have kind of a normal range. And then outside of this should give you should alert you to something. If it's particularly high without reason, the reasons could be heat, dehydration, whatever, right? You may be worried about being sick, which is a very reasonable thing, right? And worst case scenario, actually a heart problem. Worthwhile noting that as well. So there's certainly some people who've had arrhythmias. These again, arrhythmias are rare. I wouldn't be jumping to that as my first thing. They used to say to this in medical school: if you look outside your window and you see a horse or something that looks like a horse and it's black and white striped, it's probably a horse that's been painted, not a zebra. If you don't live in Africa, so it's worthwhile considering. Like rare things are rare, right? So
Where I live, if I look out the window, it actually is a zebra. So
yeah, more. But that's a really good example here. It probably is a zebra, not a painted horse, because why would you paint a horse? And so if you have if you have a higher heart rate and you're of an age group where arrhythmias are relatively common, say you're a 60-year-old endurance athlete, atrial fibrillation's pretty relevant. So if you're not feeling unwell, you have no reason to think you're sick. Maybe it is an arrhythmia, right? Because that's about your audience, your demographic, right? For Jack, he's not an endurance athlete and he's 20 something years old. It's probably not an arrhythmia, right? So that's context is important. That's the whole point of that analogy, right? And it's a perfect example with you in Africa. The other thing is if it's particularly low, people generally want to see a low heart rate. Like, oh, my heart rate's low. This is a great thing. It can actually be an indication of like sort of overtraining type picture or not recovering properly, because you can have a parasympathetic dominance that will sort of suppress your heart rate. So
interesting.
you'll find you can't get your heart rate up. You also, if you took lactate, you'd find it would be pretty low as well. You couldn't get that up either. So I say all this to say I'm never too worried about heart rate within, let's call it 10 beats, right? So if I'm expecting it to be 130 and it's 120 or it's 140, not super worried. If I'm expecting it to be 130 and it's 160, and I know my heart rate monitor is right, because that's always the other question, like sanity check, is my heart rate monitor correct? Because they can malfunction or misread or whatever, and it's sustained high, then I'd be really like questioning why. And then similarly, if I'm expecting 130 and for some reason it's 90, then I'm pretty convinced something's wrong. Not necessarily with me, more with the heart rate monitor. But if it was 100, I'd be a little bit, or 110, I'd be like, oh, why is it so low? So, but again, context matters. If you haven't been training hard and it's super low, then it's probably not an overtraining thing, right? So context is always so important here in interpreting data. And there's this, again, I think I've talked about this before. They talk about the three Ps, or Stephen Seiler talks about the three Ps. So physiology, perception, and then performance. So in this context, Jack's talking about performance. I'm warming up, so he knows what that pace is, 5:30. That's his performance. That is a stable factor. Then his heart rate is the physiology, which in this context could be low or high. And then it's about your perception. Do you feel like that heart rate is appropriate for what you're doing? Right? So it's perception. It's a three. They also talk about the Holy Trinity if you more
How,
religiously inclined.
how accurate is perception throughout populations?
Pretty accurate if you spend time to think about it. I think historically, let's call it 20 years ago, it's pretty good. Nowadays, people are so disconnected from how they feel, and it's incentivized to be disconnected from how they feel, right? We're told to buck up and keep going. So I think that's part of why wearables are so helpful these days, is they help people dial their perception back in, so to speak. But, when I was running 20 years ago, we didn't have GPS watches. We had like time and whatever else. So you had to learn pacing based on feel, and then the feedback of a stopwatch on a track or something like that, right? So I ran with a guy, I've told the story multiple times. I ran with a guy who could tell us how far we'd run, what pace we're running, all that stuff. And I could never do that. I'm better at that now, thanks to the help of a GPS watch giving me that feedback, than I was back then when I didn't have that GPS watch. So that's worked as a tool for me, because that's been something I've tried to gain. So they can be a tool in that respect and help people. But I guess all this is to say, heart rate is messy. You need to use it in conjunction with other metrics so you understand things and provide context. High or low is probably not ideal. Lower isn't necessarily better without context of that, right? And it can be pretty labile, and which means like variable and movable. Particularly if you've had a little bit of time off, everyone thinks, they come back and they go, oh, I must be unfit, my heart rate's high. It's like, well, actually, you've probably just lost some some plasma volume, which is like the amount of water in your blood basically, can go down pretty quickly.
Well, Jack, thank you so much for that question. I love listener questions. If you'd like to get in touch with us, like I said, 1% Better Pod on Instagram. That is our handle, 1% Better Pod. Let's move on. Let's have a look at what's happening in the world of sports. David, you mentioned here before, we love coming back to things we've talked about because there's a through thread and we love to follow stories and see where they go. We have multiple times talked about Grand Slam, which is Michael Johnson's track event, which, has had some success and not so great success. We're not going to go into more detail, but they've cancelled events, they haven't paid athletes, and Michael Johnson has put out a statement on his social media with regards to that. So if you want to know more about Grand Slam, we're not going to go into detail today. Go to Grand Slam social media platforms or Michael Johnson's himself and go read that statement. And then Diamond League, I didn't even know it was happening last week. You asked me, did you watch Diamond League? It happened in Poland. You should really go watch it. I do whatever you say. So I did go watch it. It was so interesting, man. They had 7 meeting records, a bunch of world leads, and it looks like people are really coming into form now, a month out of the Tokyo World Championships.
Yeah, I mean, this is a standard pattern in the Diamond League. Is that as the season goes on, performances get better, right? That's like generally how training works, and people are clearly targeting this, right? People like Noah Lyles have really had most of the season off or done very little racing. Is now coming into sharpening season, I guess. They do some races to sharpen up because like there's something about racing, hormonally or whatever that piques you. Um, there's also one, we are recording on a Wednesday. I believe there's one tonight, Lausanne as well. So there's like a little
There
patch where
is,
there's
yeah.
a bunch in a row, like a space of 2 weeks is about 4. So it's a good season for this if you're interested. So we'll talk about, maybe we'll talk about Lausanne next week. We'll see how we go. But I mean, there was lots of things I watched here that I found interesting. Keely Hodgkinson came back. She's had a hamstring injury. So she came back from that and just decimated the field. I looked at her, I was like, she does not look like she's come off a hamstring. And there are 2 ways to do this, right? You come back early, a little bit before you're ready, or you come back late when you're like right there. And she did the latter one, obviously.
She's actually,
Um,
I watched the YouTube channel. She's put out a video on how she's come back, what she went through, and now that she's back, very, very interesting. Covers her training in Portugal for preparing for this. So go hop onto her YouTube channel and go watch
yeah, well, I mean, this was her second fastest time ever. So her fastest time was winning the Olympics last year, and then she's come
that.
back on her
Wow.
second fastest time. This is the ninth fastest time of all time.
Wow.
So I like this was a proper thing. I took a couple of things away from this. She's the clear favorite for the World Championships. Now, that doesn't mean she'll win it because 800 is a brutal race like that. Could be tactical and she doesn't win it. The other, particularly if she's had a hamstring, she might be missing that top end speed. She may be able to sustain a submaximal effort better because she basically time trialed this, right? She went pretty hard from the gun and went for it. Whereas if it was a tactical race in a final and you had Mary Moraa there and stuff, maybe not so easy. I also reckon she's the one that's going to go sub 4. If anyone was going to do it, I reckon she's a chance.
Interesting. Really?
Yeah, so she probably needs to be close to a 152, is what people say to run sub 4. If you look at like the conversion for men, but she's not super far from that, and it's easier to extend things and make someone quicker. So if you've got that durability already, it's really hard to like speed up comparative to I'm already fast enough. I just need to gain durability and be able to extend that out. So we talk about extensifying or intensifying. It's easier to extensify than intensify. So I reckon she's a chance at that, or if she wants it, she's a good chance of that, and would be smart for her and a good narrative as she just wins a couple more 800s over some years, starts to slowly step up. She's a good chance of it, and again, she was part of the broadcast, all those things. So she's a very smart businesswoman. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nike tapped her and said, "Hey, how interested are you in this?" And she maybe does it. So
You heard it here
um,
first. Your predictions always come true. Let's keep following that.
oh, that's
It's a big one. A big one, yeah.
yeah, that's a real speculative one. I mean, pole vault's interesting. Like Mondo's easily one of the biggest stars in the world when it comes to track and field, and he's worth watching because he's just
Mondo
such a good showman.
Duplantis. We're not all on first
Yeah,
name basis.
wow, everyone knows Mondo, mate. He's like Prince, single word, single name. But I've been really interested, less so in Mondo and more by Corrales, the Greek guy.
Mm.
He's been sort of not pushing Mondo, but like keeping Mondo honest. He's finally broken 6 meters and broke it maybe 2-3 weeks ago at the championships, and he's done really well. Really good mentality. You see him trying to win pole vault competitions as well. He's trying to
Mm.
beat Mondo, which
Mm.
I think is interesting because he's in a different league, and it could be easy to go like, oh, I'm just going to jump my own thing, and Mondo's going to do what he does. But he's like, no, I going to try and do this and win it. So I think he's got the right mentality. So keep an eye on him to keep improving, I reckon. Remembering that, when you're at Mondo's level, you have to be very good to keep getting better, whereas it's easier to get towards Mondo's level than it is to be at Mondo's level and improve from there. So um, that's one to watch there. I mean, the 3,000 meter race was billed as a big thing. The women's 3,000 meter here, you had Faith Kipyegon in it trying to break the world record, and this is an old world record. It's like 20 something years old. It's, from one of these Chinese athletes that everyone thinks was dirty and very likely was. So
That's what the commentators was pretty much saying. They were saying that this run that Faith did, everyone will consider this the world record anyway, because they pretty much surmised that the record was broken by an athlete who was doping.
I mean, they can say that, but that's not what people are going to think because the record books are the record books. So
Yeah,
like you can keep it's a caveat every time. It'll be like,
yeah,
yeah, this is the fastest since Faith Kipyegon ran that thing. It's like until you break that record, it ain't broken.
yeah.
Fortunately or unfortunately, she's less than a second off it, so she's probably going to do it if she does it again, right? Remembering 3,000 meters is not a race she runs often, so give her another punt at it, she probably does it, or actually give her some competition, she might do it.
Was there anyone else in this race? Because there was one camera shot where it was from the finish line down the straight. She was approaching the finish line, and there was no one else in shot. No one was around the bend yet. It was like, is she training here as a solo race?
I mean, probably her biggest competitor paced her. Jess Hull from Australia, who holds the world 2,000 meter record, she paced her.
I don't know if I wasn't listening to the commentary, but I didn't know that she was pacing it. I was like, oh, look at these two. They're just going out with a pacemaker. And then when Jess pulled over, I was like, oh wow, okay, that's big.
Yeah, I mean, it's good from Jess. It's probably a good hit out for her. She's probably not that interested in racing a 3,000 at this stage of the season. I think she likes Faith quite a bit. I think they have a good relationship, so it kind of makes some sense. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of an exhibition. I don't love exhibitions. I just like, they're fine. I'd rather see a race. I'd rather have seen her and Jess go hammer and tong for 3,000 meters and see what happened, but it is what it is. The women's 400, go watch this race because you see two different pacing strategies. Everyone thinks the 400 is an all-out sprint. It is not. There is pacing to it. There's pacing to a 200, let alone a 400. And you see one person go out really hard. I can't remember her name. Sorry, I don't know these ladies' names. But one goes out super hard, and one just like waits to the end and comes through hard. And it's fascinating to watch.
Paulino, I think, who came in the end the
Yes,
one, and that's how she runs.
yes.
She's really strong in the last 150, 200.
Also paces it as such. It's not just about
Mm.
strength. It's about use of. If you think about it, like you've got a certain amount of fuel to spend or battery power or whatever, she measures it more and does it late. So yeah, it's cool. And then similarly, good off Sege won the 1,500 meter in the women's. She's one of the most enjoyable people to watch run at the moment because she runs like we used to run when we were children. And it's not to demean her; it's to say that she just goes from the gun, goes as hard as possible, and then just grits her teeth and hangs on. It's a
She looked like she
terrible
was
way to pace it.
dying.
Yeah, terrible way to pace it, but fun to watch because you get this like real rabbit in the hair, the rabbit and the tortoise thing of like she's out front. Are they going to catch her or not? But I mean, she ended up running like really well. So she ran the fifth fastest time in history. Um, she did really well there. She was chasing, or it looked like she was chasing Faith Kipyegon's 1,500 meter world record, which is 3:48. She ran 3:50 in the end, so she was on track. But she went out and ran a 62 and then a 57 to come through in 1:59. So that
Wow.
is flying. That's sub 4 minute pace. To go there. So that was, I mean, it's actually a little bit quicker than that because we're not going to get into it. It's 1,500 meters, not a mile. But anyway, and then Chibet was really interesting. So she came down from the 5,000 and 10,000 and ran a 3:54. So that is a very quick time for that. We're seeing this more and more. We saw this with Grant Fisher as well. These people who can come down and run really quickly over a 1,500 meter as well. So I'm not sure what's driving that ability. I think maybe people stepping up earlier and the spikes helping them step up earlier so they still have some of that speed maintained. It's hard to know, but it's super interesting to observe. And then your boy, Akani Simbine, had a shocker in the 100 meters, mate.
I don't know what it is about my ability to spot high performance. I'm not a physiologist or coach like you, but I can spot high performance when I can see it, and I can see focus and when an athlete is in form or not. And on the start line already, I could see he was going to do nothing. I don't know. I wish I could explain this ability. So, I mean, I don't know if I expected him to finish second last, but I expected him to not be close to the front at all. So I wasn't surprised.
Yeah, I mean, all eyes were on everyone else, right? In terms
Yeah.
of it was really Kishane Thompson and Noah Lyles everyone was watching. Um, That's effectively a like if you think about this rationally, it's really a 60-meter guy versus a 200-meter guy. Noah's probably a better 200-meter runner, and Kishane's probably a better 60-meter runner. Uh, Kishane's obviously very fast. He's got the fastest time for a few years. He's got the
Well,
fastest PB in the field.
I think we've talked about this before. Why does Noah always start so slow? He started slow and then he always catches up, but Thompson is just so quick you can't catch him.
Well, it's not intentional. He's going as fast as he can, mate. Like he's
No,
not.
but
He's not intentionally slowing down at the start. Hey, some people are like, it's like saying, "Why are you good at whatever?" And the other guy's not like, well, he's not that good at starting. And
okay.
the time taken to get the start right, because starting is a skill, right? There are physiological components to it, and there's a lot of skill components to it. And the start is key. And obviously, the better starter you are, the better you'll be at shorter races because it's disproportionately effective, right, or impactful. Over a 60, if you're a bad starter, you don't even start the race. You're like, I'm not even going to race this thing, right? So like Noah wouldn't race a competitive 60 because there's no point. He's not going to be competitive in that. Whereas
Okay.
Kishane is competitive in that. Usain Bolt was also a pretty bad starter. He was not a very good starter, and
Mm.
this is why someone like Usain would have been better in the 400 meters, particularly because of his height as well. It becomes more of an advantage. But we digress. They obviously showed off. Kishane took it. Noah should feel pretty good about this though. He's still coming into his season. Like Kishane's been running fast for a while. Noah's just getting there. He keeps improving. He really pulled him in the last little while. It wasn't as big a difference as you think. So let's see. Yeah,
Peaking for the world
let's.
champs, probably. He's probably all in on the
He
world champs.
he certainly is. I'm not sure if he's running the two there or if he's focusing on the one. I'm not sure what he's doing, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I hope he does both. And
Okay.
then Femke Bol cakewalked out 400-meter hurdles. Like she's going to be. I've heard Sydney McLaughlin's not running the 400-meter hurdles in Tokyo, so like
Yeah.
it's
That's what
Femke's to lose.
the commentators said. They said she was running the 400 flat.
Yeah, so it's Femke's to lose. The men's 1500 meters was stacked. Nagoose won this, Jared Nagoose, which helps him potentially run the Diamond League final. And then if he wins that, he gets to enter the Tokyo World Champs as a Diamond League winner. So let's see. It's interesting. I mentioned last week we were talking about this and we didn't, but his pacing style or his racing style traditionally is to go hard from the gun and sort of lead it and then try and win, right? Burn people off, as opposed to a sit and kick style, which is what he sort of did here. The thing here is this was slow. This was a very slow race. So in that context, Yared can sit and kick. I don't think he can do that in major championships because his kick isn't as good as the other guys. So the alternative there is get out kicked or try and make it honest and then do better as a result. And this is game theory 101. It's really hard, but I think ultimately it boils down to like if you don't have a kick at some point you can't run that race. You have to step up. So like should Yared step up to the 5,000 meters because he doesn't have the kick for the 1,500 meters potentially. Right now it's hard to say that given he ran a bronze medal I think in the last Olympics. I think he's a medalist certainly. I think it was bronze. So really hard to say that he doesn't deserve to be running the 1,500 meters, and I'm not suggesting that. But what I'm getting at here is broadly, if you don't have the kick, you should probably step up distances
Interesting.
and help there because you still need the kick. I was texting with somebody last night about Andreas Helmgren. Somebody's up at the moment watching him train, and he was saying like, "Oh, he's in good shape, and he's going to do this." I was like, "Well, does he have the kick to do anything at the World Championships? Because if he doesn't have the kick, it doesn't matter, right? Because these things are often slower, and even if they're not slower, you still have to be able to kick past people. So, yeah,
You
the
could
kick
see
is
he really wanted to win here because obviously, as you said, like he didn't make the World Championships team in the US trials. So the only way to get that is to win the Diamond League final, and you could tell he really wanted to win this year. Like I was just watching him because I knew this backstory.
Yeah, for sure. And so he needs to, yeah, so that's the story. He needed enough points to make the final. He probably needs to do pretty well for another couple of races, and then he'll probably make the final. And then once he makes the final, he has to win that final. So, and the last one was the 100 meters. This was won by Jefferson Wooden from the US. She's a clear favorite for Tokyo, like not even close. So Shikari's struggling and like looking terrible. She's having a bad year. And lots of personal life stuff for her. And then Julian Alfred's out with a hamstring at the moment, which a month out, if you're not running racing, like you can be back and do well, but I'm not sure, particularly in the 100 meters. It'll be interesting to see how she goes.
So I don't
Yeah.
know these athletes super well, but again, going back to my theory of being able to spot high performance on the start line, I call Jefferson Wooden to win just because of how focused she was. You know, when the camera zooms in on them one by one and they wave to the crowd, she put up a hand sort of just to do it as a gesture, but her eyes were focused on the lane and focused on the race. She didn't look at the camera once. She was in the zone, and I could tell A, she wants this, B, nothing's going to stop her from getting it.
Yeah, I challenge you on that. Like, I see what you mean. You can see it. I don't know if it's what you've described though, because like Usain used to mess around and do all those things, and that's what he needed, right? So, and if
Yeah,
you watch Noah, he does a bit of stuff as well. So, like,
yeah.
I don't think I think you were correct, but I don't think why you say you. I think if I challenge you and showed you four other people, you'd be like, no, no, he's ready to go, but he's not doing that thing. So, um, yeah, it's interesting. She's on form though. She is the form runner in the women's 100 at the moment, and the only person who can really challenge her at the moment is Julian Alfred, but she's got a hamstring. So
Mm.
I'm
Such a pity. Oh,
picking
such a pity.
Jefferson
I'm
Wooden
so
for Tokyo. So let's see. I hope I'm wrong because I love Alfred, but let's see.
should we cover Leadville 100 quick? I know you DM'd me some stories with some records, but I think both records were broken in the male and women's field.
Yeah, I mean David Roche bettered his record from last year. It was a pretty he had a really bad race at Western States. Like he bettered his record. I think this is a you should go faster over time. Now, of course, on a trail race, there's lots of other factors. It has to be a good enough day and those sort of things. It's obviously not a bad day if they both got broken, these records. But yeah, like you should get better year on year, particularly on the same course. So like it's impressive and like you never take anything for granted, but not as impressive as Anne Flower. So she's an ER doc. She beat the course record and came in second overall, which ironically, the last time when the course record was set by Anne Trayson, she also came second overall. That was in 1994. She's considered one of the greatest ever ultra runners, men or women, Anne Trayson. So she took 8 minutes off that record. So it's a huge one. Now, reportedly, the course is a little bit uh, harder now. So I think it's a little bit harder now and whatever else. But the point is, um, this is really impressive. Anne Flower is an interesting person. I was doing a bit of research into her. She's been running shorter ultras and winning them. This is her first 100 miler, but she's also run a 240 marathon.
Wow.
So yeah, she's won Pikes Peak Marathon or done really well, and a few others. So um, she reportedly hit 60 grams an hour, although it was probably a touch more as her fueling. In contrast to David Roche, who's hitting 130, and she only just started using a GPS watch. She actually used it just for time of day. She's previously not even used a watch at all, and she bought her shoes off eBay. She's got these Hokas that she likes. So I have a theory. She's an ER doc. I have a theory that this stuff, these like ER type shifts on your feet, are helpful for ultra endurance performance. So
That
there's
would make
a
sense.
yeah, well, there's lots of aspects of it, right? There's a lady called Kristen Bull who I met and knew okay a while back in Australia. She held the 100K record. She may still do for Australia, and she was a nurse and was on her feet all the time. And she used to say she used to do these overnight shifts and then go for a run in the morning. I was like, can you imagine? Like that's the perfect training for 100 milers or 100K races where you're like already fatigued and then you do it.
Cool. We're entering into marathon season. We're going to touch on the Sydney Marathon field shortly, as our guest coming up will be taking on those big names. But you mentioned to me earlier in the week that the Chicago fields has just been announced.
Yeah, so I was like a little bit underwhelmed by these. They're somewhat interesting, but like wasn't super enthralled with them. There's no one that really jumped off the page, and I thought, oh, geez, I got to watch them race. There's probably we were talking earlier. I think there's probably a bit of cannibalism here by other races, right? So previously you had Chicago and New York. It's like, all right, which one are you going to? And like, we go over there. But now we have World Championships as well, so it's a third one, and you have Sydney, so fourth one, and then you have Valencia, which is increasingly attracting people, and then there's always a couple others that people get pulled into, like Rotterdam or Amsterdam or something like this, which are not quite the same tier. But if you get a good payday for going, and
Yeah.
you're the best in the field, you might win that. It might be better for you, so that makes some sense there. So I mean, the headline is here. I won't go through all of them. I'll mention a couple of top runners and then a couple of people that people might be interested in based on our listenership. So, Mugertu Alimu from Ethiopia's 216 runner. She was fourth in Tokyo 2024. She won Valencia 24 and third in Chicago 23 and second in London 23. So she's obviously got some pedigree. Hoi Faisa for Ethiopia again, 217. She won Frankfurt 24 and finished third in Tokyo this year. And then Irene Cheptai from Kenya is 217 as well. She was fourth in Boston third in Chicago last year, one Hamburg last year, and one World Cross Country, which is usually a good sign for a marathoner. And we talk a bit about World Cross Country with Lisa as well in the interview upcoming. So those are probably the three. I mean, those are the three fastest in the fields. And then of note, Kelly Horger Thackeray from the UK. She's one of Britain's fastest. She's running, as is Philly Bowden. So big social media following, fan
She just
favorite
got
Philly Bowden.
married, so let's see how good marriage life is to her running.
Well, we'll see. And then other people I flagged in the field: Lindsay Flanagan, Natasha Rogers, Gabby Rucker, and Dakota Pompone from the US. So, Dakota was an Olympian, and Lindsay Flanagan's had a long career. So let's see how they go. It'll be interesting to see. That's a very small US women's field. So again, that'd be an incentive for these girls to some degree because like that's a payday coming for them. There's only they probably pay at least top three. They probably pay lower. So now all of a sudden these girls are
Top
good
three
chance of.
US finishes.
Yes, in addition to that's generally what happens is they have these top three finishes and then top three US finishes as well.
Oh, I never knew
So
that.
there's a payday coming there for them. And then the men's side, it's a little bit more exciting, I think. John Correa. So John Correa is one of my favorite runners at the moment. So he won Boston this year after falling, and so he's the second fastest in Chicago ever behind Kelvin Kipton. So he won there last year. So interesting to see how he goes this year. He'd be looking to probably go 201, take a minute off his PB would be good for him. He'd obviously be looking to win as well. Timothy Kiplagat's there as well. So he was second in Tokyo last year, second in Rotterdam, and then won Melbourne Marathon in 2022. Interestingly, he must have been paid a bit to go down there. And then Amos Kipruto, so he won Hamburg this year and was third in Chicago last year. So let's see. And then others that are people would be maybe interested in. Bashir Abdi is the Belgian guy. So it's Bashir Abdi and Abdi Nagy. So Abdi is the Dutch guy and Bashir is the Belgian guy. So Bashir came second in the Olympics. He's a Rotterdam winner and a Chicago third. And then Jacob Kiplimo, so world's fastest half marathon. So he's run a 56:42 half marathon. He was second in London this year, and he's a couple time over world cross country champ. So let's see how he goes. People will be looking for him to go much quicker than 2:03, which is where his PB is at the moment. People will be picking him for the one to break 2 hours. So let's see if he can actually convert that. And then other notables, Galen Rupp is running. So it's where his PB is. He sort of runs Chicago every year, hoping to do okay. I'm not convinced. Connor Mance is there. He's probably going to break the American record. That would be his goal, I would suggest. Matt Reichman is there from the US. CJ Albertson, who often does many, many marathons and paces them. He goes out really hard. So let's see if he can do well there. Ryan Ford's there from the US as well. And then Mark Scott from Great Britain. He's one of the NN running team. And then, interestingly, Rory Linkletter was sixth in Boston. He's a Canadian. He's I think, Canadian record holder. So let's see how he goes. And Zuhir Taibi. So he won Houston. He was 10th in Boston and 5th in Boston 2023. 10th in Boston 2024. So let's see how Zuhir goes. I sort of tracked him. You see him go off the front a little bit early, so that's why his name sparked up for me. So those are kind of the fields. I'm probably more excited about the men's race, but let's see. Again, lots of good money up for grabs for the US men as well. Again, a pretty, I wouldn't say diluted field, but certainly weaker. You got Clayton Young running world champs, for instance, not running here with Connor, his training partner. So, that dilutes the fields a little bit.
Let's before we get to Lisa, let's have a quick look at who the headliners are at Sydney Marathon, a brand new world major this weekend. We did go into detail on it a few weeks ago. That episode is entitled "Inside Breaking 4." That's from July the 4th. If you want to have a deeper look at the field, but Safar Nassan and Bridget Kosga will be headlining the women's field. Eliud Kipchoge, the GOAT, will be headlining the men's field, and then Lisa Weightman, who we're about to talk about the race within the race, the Aussie race. She'll be up again against Jess Stenson and Leanne Pompiani. On the men's Aussie side, Brett Robinson will be up against Liam Adams. So, we'll be following that. That's all, Lisa. We'll be tracking it. It's exciting to know someone now, to know their backstory. So, for sure, we'll be tracking her. And I have no doubt that you will be doing the same after you hear from her. Lisa Weightman is a 4-time Olympic marathon representative, qualifying for her first Olympics in her debut marathon in London 2008, running 2:32:32. In addition to this, she's had a long career as a tech consultant and is a mother to Pete. Her marathon personal best is 2:23:15 from Osaka in 2023, and she has run a 68:48 half marathon. Beyond her Olympic achievements, she won a silver medal at the 2018 Delhi Commonwealth Games and a bronze in the 2010 New Delhi Commonwealth Games. In addition to this, she's a three-time top 8 finisher at World Marathon Majors and twice national champion in the half marathon. She's also the winner of the 2013 Melbourne Marathon, 2010 Nagano Olympic commemorative marathon, and 2009 Christchurch half marathon. Influenced heavily from her father, who was an AFL footballer and coach, whose advice, nothing beats persistence, has underpinned her career. Far from a running career of smooth sailing, Lisa suffered 9 stress fractures in 9 years early in her career. A traditional post race meal is a burger, fries, and a milkshake. Lisa, ahead of the Sydney Marathon, welcome to 1% Better.
Thank you. It's great to be spending this time with both of you and all your listeners.
Yeah, well, appreciate you joining us. It's we were excited to be put in touch by Precision, with thanks to them ahead of Sydney. So I guess let's start out with like why Sydney? It's probably the big question. I mean, maybe it's self-explanatory, but also maybe not.
Yeah, so I have had the fortunate experience of competing for Australia at 2 World Championship events over my career. So back in 2009, I finished 18th in Berlin, and then the last World Championships, I finished 16th in Budapest. Both of those experiences were super hot marathons, and I feel like they were fabulous opportunities to wear the green and gold and represent our wonderful country. But it was hard to pass up the opportunity to then run in our very first major in Australia. So I chose Sydney over nominating for the World Championships because it was you can never do the first. Once it's done, it's done. So the celebration in Sydney is going to be epic, and it'll be great to be part of that. Great to be able to see all of the running community that has supported me in my journey, and to just really be part of that celebration and enthusiasm that we've got for running. So yeah, just hard decision to not nominate for an Australian team. It's always something that's important to me to represent your country, but also, I guess, in this situation, we are representing Australia to the rest of the world by showcasing an amazing major.
Well, let's double click there because this is something in the marathon world that's very unique, right? Because of limitations of the number you can run in a year versus something like even a 10,000 meters or even a half marathon where you can run quite a few more. There's this tension between world marathon majors, Olympic Games, world championships, and it's hard to balance, right? Because different people value things differently. How do you think about them from an achievement standpoint, right? Not necessarily how do you value which one you'd enter, but like, you've got top eights in world marathon majors. You've also done really well in your Olympics and in your Commonwealth Games and world championships. So like, how do you think about those races? Like,
That's
and
actually such a
achievement
good
in them?
question. I'm so surprised. Like that's such a good question.
It's a good question. Yeah, so I guess when I first started, I should sort of cast things back to my first marathon. And my first marathon, I'd actually made our world cross country team, and we were racing in Scotland. We had an amazing team. The women won. We won a bronze medal. It was
Yep.
one of the most exhilarating experiences of my career because I was running the final lap of the course in Glasgow, and the commentator was shouting out, if the Australian passes the Americans, they're going to move into bronze medal position. So I had like this commentary like going on the loudspeaker while I was chasing down an American, and so I had such an amazing experience to win a bronze medal with my teammates. And 2 weeks later was London Marathon. And my husband had said to me, hey, why don't you try to get a spot in London, and you never know, you might make the Olympics. And that's kind of what happened. So I ran London. I ran it more as a time trial and on my own, and I ended up making the Australian team. And then from there, I've ran 30 marathons in my career. So over the journey, there's been plenty of ups and downs, plenty of moments where I've wanted to sort of sit down and have a think about whether it's the right thing to consider, to continue in a marathoning career. And we've sort of, we've signed up to another one and another one and another experience. And I am really fortunate to have had such a long career and to be in a position where I've been able to run all of the world majors so far except for Boston. Still got that on my bucket list. And also been an athlete who has represented Australia at Commonwealth Games, World Champs, Olympics multiple times. And so I really have had a chance to experience marathoning at all levels. And I also have done some pretty crazy things, like when I ran my PB in Osaka, I then the following week ran Tokyo for fun, and which in hindsight wasn't as fun as I was expecting it to be. But we can talk about that later. And and I've been had the opportunity to go to China last year and do a few races there too, back to back. And so just having the opportunity to experience marathons all over the world at all different levels. The world major level, the team representative. I guess it's given me and my family such an opportunity to see the world and just really experience marathoning from all different levels.
Yeah. And do you have a race aside from World Cross, which for listeners who aren't sort of as familiar with it, World Cross is particularly tough because there are so many. Like, you can have 6 people from each of the East African countries, right? So all of a sudden you have this like really big lot of depth where you wouldn't have it anywhere else. So World Cross is often considered one of the toughest distance running medals to get. So it's a huge achievement. But outside of that, do you have a favorite race where you think, that was, is it silver at the Commonwealth Games, or is it, some of your times you've run, or a World Marathon Major perhaps? I mean, you haven't run Boston yet, which is, somebody I've run Boston. It's pretty crazy and pretty special, but I've run a couple of other ones as well, and they're also great. So, do you have a favorite race?
Yeah, I've got a few different favorites, I guess. So my ultimate favorite would have to be when I was 5th at London. I was in top shape. I felt like I had everything under control in that race, and I ran to the best of my ability and really had an experience. I finishing 5th in such an amazing field, working through the field, and just and having that opportunity to get so close to the podium, that would have to be one of the most exhilarating marathons that I've done. But on the other side, I love the opportunity to win silver at Com Games. Obviously, I would have preferred gold, but I did everything I possibly could on the day to win silver. And so you have to be proud of those moments and the experiences that you put in on the day. And then probably the other one that really that I'm super proud of is not necessarily the Osaka that I ran my PB at, which when I ran, my first qualify for the Paris Olympics, but the one I did in 2024, the conditions were horrendous. It was freezing. People were getting hypothermia, and I was pretty close to first place and managed to finish on the podium in such dreadful conditions, and still run in the 224s there. So I think that race is pretty special to me because I know how difficult that race was, and that the conditions were there to certainly test us as athletes. And I feel really proud of that experience.
Lisa, you mentioned a couple of things I want us to come back to later. It is the longevity and how you've had such a long career. And I know David was also curious to see what experiences and advancements in technology you've experienced over such a long career. I want us to come back to that. But first, I want to go a little behind the curtain. How does it work for elites? Like, if you want to do a World Marathon Major, do you enter like us amateur? Like, did you just write up and enter, or do you have to be invited? How does it work?
Yeah, so you need an agent at the elite level, someone who will act on your behalf and have a conversation with the race and present you as an athlete for their elite field. It helps to also have a World Athletics label, and that all depends on your results. So the label that you have, which is platinum or gold, basically gives you more of an opportunity to get into the field, and they'll have World Athletics has certain number of labeled athletes that they need for their fields depending on their label. And so all of those things help. And so I have an agent. I've been working with Derek Frood for most of my career since 2009. And we've we've got a really strong relationship. He did some training with my coach Dick Telford when he was representing New Zealand in the marathon, and so it's really nice. I've got a really, I guess, kind of like a family as my team, and everyone is kind of all at, working towards the same plan, and looking at my best interests and working out some of the adventures that we can do together.
Yeah, and so just for listeners who may not be as familiar, there are different labels of events, as you've highlighted, and they have requirements for different numbers of labels of each athlete, but they also have a requirement for a diversity of countries and then finish times. So they need to maintain label status, they need to have a certain number of people finish under a certain time as well, in both men's and women's fields. So that's how you end up with these lists that are quite big, which is great for athletes, quite frankly. Like it's awesome because they have to, the assumption is not everyone's going to have a great day. So
Yes.
they have to have a deeper field than is required. If they need 10 people under 225, they have to probably have 15 in the field who can run that. So on that note, you've been with Dick, as I understand it, your whole career, right? And that is pretty rare these days, both the longevity of career, but also to stay with one coach the whole time. Can you talk to us a little bit about that relationship? I'm sure it's evolved over the years in a pretty great way. And what does it look like now versus the beginning? Like how hands-on is he versus how hands-off is he, etc.?
Yeah, of course. So I started my career in my sort of mid-teens, and I had a local coach. So his name was Jeff, and I joined the boys team because there was no girls in my club that was nearby, near home. And so I was fortunate to just start doing some shorter races on the track with the boys, and that sort of introduced me to athletics. And then I then moved over to have Dick mentor me because Dick used to coach my dad footy. So, Dick played as well. He played for Collingwood, for those who know Australian rules football. And he also played and then coached at Preston, which was where my dad was. And so he knew of my arrival as a little baby. And then, many years later, I reached out and asked him if he could help me with my, potential running career, because I was getting a lot of stress fractures in my shin and in my very early days. And I needed an expert to sort of help me and guide me through that process. And so he started mentoring me, and I would do some running with a coach here who was coaching a lot of the elite women in Melbourne, and her name was Pam Turney. And so I was running with a wonderful group of women, building my endurance, and with the support of Pam and of Dick, I moved from, this injury, roller coaster for my early 20s while I was also studying, and then into, a nice, even, consistent plan. We got on top of those injuries. We did a lot of change in, the conversation that you wanted to touch on soon is technology and recovery aids and things like that. Well, we did a lot of work there and managed to work out what was going to be the right thing to eradicate all the injuries. And then unfortunately, Pam has passed away, but I've been very fortunate to have, Dick throughout my marathoning career. So I finished up with Pam in 2008 after Beijing. And then from 2009, when I represented Australia in the World Champs in Berlin, Dick took over from there as the full-time coach. And so I've been very lucky to have such wonderful people guiding me who, I speak to my very first junior coach, Jeff, all the time, and he's very supportive, as are all the club members. And, it's really lovely. Like I said earlier, I feel like my running career is like a family, the team around me is like a family. And then with Dick, he's in Canberra, I'm in Melbourne. I'm a different athlete to most of the athletes that he coaches. So, for example, he's away at the moment coaching Cam Myers. So 1,500 meter runner, youngster. We're at opposite ends of our career. And so he's overseas with Cam, getting him ready for the World Champs. And obviously I'm here in Melbourne. So all of our kind of correspondence is through email and phone calls. But I've been working with Dick for so long that, we just kind of have a rhythm. I call him when I need to discuss something or change something, but he's pretty confident that with my husband being, pretty in close proximity, riding the bike with me on some of the hardest training sessions, that, we'll make the right choices about when to, progress with a session or not, because of risks and recovery and things like that. So he throws some interesting workouts in here and there that always surprise Locke and I, and we do our best to make them happen. And so we've got a lot of variety, particularly in this build with Sydney being hillier. But yeah, it's been such a wonderful long journey with Dick, and I feel pretty blessed to have him as my coach for all this time.
That's awesome. So for those unfamiliar, Dick, he's an AIS coach, isn't he, from memory?
Yeah, he was. So he was one of the founding sports physiologists for the AIS. And he was a head coach at the time when they had a program at the AIS, but various things have changed over time, and funds have been distributed differently in Australia. And so some things are controlled out of the national body, and some are at different state institutes. So there's no distance program at the AIS as such anymore. But Dick has a group in Canberra who he trains locally there. And then he has a couple of us that are sprinkled in other parts of Australia.
Got you.
Cool.
And let's double click there on, you mentioned things are a bit different for Sydney because of the hills. Let's double click there. How does that, so aside from you're probably running a couple more hills than normal, is there anything else that's changed for you in the Sydney build versus previous builds?
So I was a little crazy last year and ran Berlin Marathon. And then after I finished Berlin, my agent Derek rang and said, hey, I've got a race for you in China. Do you want to go? And we were at the airport after we'd had a week in Doha at a resort, just kind of relaxing and swimming and enjoying ourselves. And I hadn't ran a step for the week. And I looked at Locke and I said, maybe I better do a run first. So before we say yes to this.
Yeah.
So we got home and I went for a run. I think I did like 5 2K with a walk in between. And I came back to Locke and said, yeah, I reckon I can do this. It was 4 or 5 weeks later. So we quickly ramped things up into this kind of, it was like this slow build and then hit the peak, and then all of a sudden it was taper again. So I went off and experienced the Beijing Marathon. And then following that, I had an opportunity to do the same in Guangzhou. I probably should have taken a bit more time in between, and so my hamstring really complained in the Guangzhou race. I was feeling amazing, actually, the training, and I've learned a lot through that full block from Berlin to Guangzhou, but my hamstring complained after 25K, and so I jogged in the second half of that and then had to manage that coming back. Took a little bit of time, and just had a bit of a slower start to the year than I normally would. And so therefore I'd been pretty cautious throughout the start of this year. And the difference in this build is I haven't raced anything else. So I've been just layering each week, doing some different sessions, just trying some new things and experiencing, a different kind of program, which has been really fun as well. And also I can compare some of my previous sessions and experiences with others, but there's a lot that I've done that's different. So it kind of makes it a bit exciting to see what it can lead to.
Let's touch on longevity then, because you've said a few things now. It seems to me like you're a very good problem solver, like the way you addressed your stress fractures early in your career, jogging in the second half of a marathon when your hamstring's communicating to you. Most athletes would run through that pain and deal with it later, which isn't the best way to always go about things. But you seem to strike me as a good decision maker. Do you think that has played a role in you having such a long career?
I think so. And that's also been part of my superpower at work too. I just really like to understand why something's happening and how we can make it better and what we can do to, improve the experience. So that's what I really like doing in my corporate role as well. I guess I don't know which ones come first. I don't know whether I learned those skills because I had to go through the frustration of continually, rebuilding after each shin issue, but or whether or not I just had that innate, I'm not sure. But certainly sport has given me the grounding for being a pretty solid problem solver. I think I've had a few different experiences through all the different marathons. Like I've, ended up with food poisoning at Chicago and, was vomiting towards the end of Chicago all through the sort of last 12K. And I've had to, sort of look at experiences like that as a positive, even though it was horrendous. But sort of go, well, okay, I've got this resilience, I've got this ability to sort of push through and really get this, get to the end of the problem and then take stock. So I've had lots of experiences like that. I had COVID when I tried to run Valencia, and that was another interesting experience. And so I guess all of those experiences teach you that, you can find another level and maybe even another level again. But you've also got to be really careful because things like that can end your career. So making sure you make the right decisions and that you then look after yourself accordingly after the fact is super important.
Somebody who's done a little bit of coaching, you can hear the problem solving, there's this really fine line between tough and stupid.
Yes.
And you've made some really good calls there. And that's both, that comes from, that's training and racing, right? If Dick's not there, yes, you have Lock on the bike, but you still have to make decisions. I understand. And you have to understand the training, right? So this session, the goal is this.
Yeah.
So if I'm not feeling good, do I drop pace or do I drop mileage? And how do I tweak this? And if I'm feeling good, is it worth pushing or is next week a thing? So there's obviously a level of learning that's happened across your career and smart decision making, which allows you to be coached remotely because not everyone can do that. Yeah. There are some people who can't be coached remotely, and I think it's important. Just wanted to highlight that for listeners. And the other thing I'd say is as we go probably beyond a half marathon, it's about time. So let's call it beyond 2 hours or beyond 90 minutes. It's not really if something's going to go wrong, it's what and when and how many things and how badly. And the longer you go, the worse it gets, right? The more things go wrong. And so 30 marathons later, you've probably had a lot of these things, which allows you to perform. I mean, that performance in Osaka, I remember hearing about it and just thinking that's insane, particularly because, you're not a big person. And I mean that in any dimension, right? Whereas, I'm if I'd been running there, I'm 80 something kilos. I generate a lot of heat as a result of being big. So in the cold, small people disproportionately suffer. And despite that, going to running within, I think it's a minute of your PB at the time, you really showed a lot of people like how good and how tough you are. But a lot of that, I think, comes from those experiences you've had with the COVID and the vomiting and all that. You go, yep, I've been here before. It's a rough day. And if I can grit my teeth here, the rough day is going to work in my advantage because everyone else is going to suffer.
Yeah, and it's all about, there's quite a few elements there. It's all about that, that intrinsic motivation, what I was trying to achieve on the day, all of the training that I've pulled together, cumulatively and those sort of, I guess, not so much training indicators, but just, you over time when you've ran 30 marathons in all different places and experienced all the things that I've experienced, you just sort of know how to respond in certain ways. And sometimes that may not mean that you win, so you may not necessarily win. Like, I had COVID. I did the absolute best I could. I think I can't remember now whether I ran 224 or 225, but like I got to the finish line half dead and thought, how did I actually manage that? There's something innate that, that gets me there, and you've got to have that motivation, that goal that then helps drive you. But you've also then, like you said, you've got to be really careful. So for example, with the previous Osaka and then I ran Tokyo, I ran that race because I originally was going to pace a friend. And then she did her hamstring. So I had this entry and we'd booked all our travel and we were staying together and I was going to pace her for another sub-3. And she got injured and we were thinking, well, I'm going. I may not get invited to Tokyo and I really want to get all my stars. So we did that. But I never really thought about at the time the impact of running the first one and what that would do to, your internal organs. So, and the pressure on your internal organs. So for me, it wasn't necessarily my legs that were in trouble or anything like that, but my gut was really struggling in the latter part of Tokyo. And I think that's just because I thought all about doing all the recovery and the things that I needed to do, from a legs and, muscular skeletal system perspective. But I never thought about, there could have been other damage that was going on from such a grueling marathon. And so then in that moment, I then had to back off at Tokyo and kind of just go, okay, I'm here to enjoy myself and we don't want to do anything crazy. So, so it's kind of just having, like you said, not having that crazy thought that you've got to be super tough and you've got to make everything, you've got to make sure you gruel through everything. I think it's really important to learn, what's being tough and what's being silly. And so I've been able to do that for, 30 marathons and 31 in Sydney.
Crazy, man. How have you adapted to technology over that time? I mean, you ran in Delhi in 2010. Like, what watch were you wearing then versus what's available on the market today, for instance?
Yeah. Gosh, I can't even remember what I had on my wrist. I think I remember
Probably a
getting
Casio.
the very first Garmin's were like a computer on your arm. I remember that. I'm old enough to have had one of those.
Yeah.
And yes, a Timex, I think. Timex
Yeah.
watch that just did start stop, no laps. Yeah, that was always hard. And I think also back then when I first started, you had to calculate your distance for the week based on an estimate. So you'd go for a run for an hour and you go, oh, that's roughly whatever, And so you didn't really know. But now we all get obsessed. Oh, I have to hit this many, miles. And but really, does it, is it 180? Is it 185? Like, what's, it's not that 5K that's going to make the difference for, the Sydney Marathon. So yeah, lots of changes there. But I think the biggest one, the obvious one, is the shoe technology. We have had such a shoe war with all the brands coming from 2016, I think.
Yeah, thereabouts.
So Rio Olympics, we weren't, I wasn't aware of the fact that some of the other Nike athletes had the carbon plate shoes and we had the streaks in the race.
Wow.
And we didn't realize that until later, like when it came to light. So dealing with the ups and downs of that and the moral aspect of those early days of introducing the shoes and all of the debates around prototypes versus not allowing prototypes. And so I've had the fortunate position to have my early days of my running with these really kind of hard shoes that it took like 6 weeks to recover from a marathon. But now I have this experience as an older athlete where I've got these cushiony shoes. So it's quite nice and another reason I think why we can go longer because it's not as grueling on your body as it was back in the early part of my career. So, and then we go into nutrition. So I've been with Precision for quite a few years now. Fantastic. All of their products and their service has been amazing. And I chose to use Precision when I ran my very first Berlin marathon. And I loved the products. I like the gels and the new drink that they've got now. And then, I joined them as a sponsored athlete after that race. They reached out and heard that I was using their product and then we've, formed a really great partnership there. And I have to say, out of all of the companies that I've worked with as an athlete, when I joined Precision, all of the members of the team sent me a personal message welcoming me to Precision. And I thought that was an amazing experience for an athlete to, have them take the time to do that. And so, pretty dear to me to have that sort of a relationship. And so, so they're probably the main ones. And then you've got 1,000 recovery devices that we're all fortunate to have. And that certainly makes it a lot easier as an older athlete to recover.
Yeah, I constantly, whenever I get an out of office from Precision, I always forward it to Xylon because they have comfortably the best out of office emails I've ever seen. It's it's just that sort of company. It's I've spent some time with the guys. I know many of them personally. It's I get it. Like it'll be remiss of us not to ask what fueling looks like for you in Sydney. Do you have do you have an idea of your plan there and what you'd like to achieve?
Yeah, so we'll keep a bit of an eye on the weather because it'll tweak a little bit based on the weather. Sydney is usually quite a lot warmer than Melbourne is, so been doing a fair bit of work in the sauna and things like that. I always use the recovery tablets the electrolyte tablets. I'm thinking of recovery already. But with my sort of breakfast, when I get up, and that's the sort of the kickstart to the hydration program. And then whether I have any electrolytes during the race all depends on the temperature. I don't need them. I've done all the sweat testing with Precision, and I've got lots of data across all of the marathons I've done with them. And so I don't need any more electrolytes during the marathon, but that's just a specific plan for me because I don't excrete as much salt throughout the race. So if we're running a marathon, in 30 degrees, then obviously there's a different plan. And so throughout the marathon, I like to use the gels, but I like to take them more constantly throughout the race as opposed to just take a whole gel and consume that in a short space of time and then keep running. I've found that, taking my time with the fueling throughout the race gives me a bit more, of something else to focus on during the race, but also keeps all of my levels kind of pretty constant. So it's good to be able to have a crop top where you can store extra gels. And we have the ability to tape gels to our special drink bottles as an elite. So that also makes it a little bit easier for us to consume our additional carbs.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, a couple of questions that, they may fall a bit flat because they're probably a little bit too generic, but we'll see how we go here. Do you have any advice? I mean, you're balancing family with work and an elite career. I mean, that's most people listening to this probably can't fathom achieving it at the levels you are in two of those, let alone anymore. So is there anything that you think enables you to do that or that helps you do that, or advice you'd give to people?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think it's been a lifestyle that I've lived with my husband forever. So all of the marathons I've ran, apart from the Tokyo Olympics where we had to take time because of the COVID challenges of travel and hotel quarantine back here in Australia and things like that. Apart from that one, I've worked full time throughout all of my marathons. I think I'm better when I'm working full time because I'm not all focused mentally on running. And I like that. I don't think I would have lasted in the sport as long as I have if I was a full-time athlete. I don't like the feeling of athletics being my only identity. I don't get enough out of that experience for, as the whole person. And I know that's enough for people. And I, love that they're being able to get more time and more recovery and produce amazing results. And so it's everyone has an individual plan and should, play to their strengths. But I would never have lasted this long in the sport if it had been my only, my only job. I think so. Yeah, keeping me grounded, keeping running fun is really important because as the only thing in your life, I think it would take away that that fun part. I think the most important thing is you need to be doing it with other people. So you really need a team, that you just go and have fun with. Go and meet for runs, have a laugh. That's really important because running on your own day in and day out can get pretty monotonous and pretty boring. And also you get more out of yourself when you're in a team. So in a corporate setting or in a running and a sports setting, if you're working with others, you can achieve so much more than you can on your own. So having a team around you is super important.
Love that. And the last one, again, may fall flat, a little bit generic, but I do think there's something here that, for a young runner or to yourself as a young runner, let's call yourself 18, 19, in that, you've overcome a couple of stress fractures, but you've got a couple yet to come. What is it, something you wish you knew now that you wish you knew then that you do know now?
Well, this might be a funny answer, but I wish I had relaxed more.
Yeah.
So if I had known
No.
how long my career was going to go for, I
Yeah.
certainly would have just been a uni student for a little bit and,
Yeah.
just kind of, backed off the pressure. But at the time, I was just trying so hard to prove myself because, I wanted to, get to the next level and I wanted the opportunity to represent Australia. But I was constantly just hitting this roadblock and then not being able to prove myself.
Yep.
And because I was in that cycle, I was also getting nervous when I would race because I was nervous about injuring myself again and going through the process again. But also, I felt like I had so much to prove constantly. And I even feel like that now at 40, 46. I still feel like I have to prove myself all the time. But I can deal with that a bit better now than what I did back then. So I think I would tell myself to relax and that I've got all the time ahead of me. But it's hard to tell yourself that when you're 18.
I was going to say, having dealt with some athletes, I'm not convinced that you would have heard that. But you
Right.
say that's it sounds funny. It does not at all. I caught up with somebody recently who's got a big race coming up. They've just had a child, and I looked at them and I was like, they're going to perform super well
Yeah.
because they're very meticulous, very type A, like classic endurance athlete, and uh, the child has just really mellowed them out, pulled them back from a like hyper control to a little bit of a looser control. And I think, and it's something it took me a long time to realize in my own running, was like that stress and that hyper control
Yeah.
is excessive. And if we could just pull it back a little bit, we're
Yeah.
going to end up, more controlled and more meticulous than 90% of the population, and yet not to a pathological end. So I do think loosening that grip and that stress is a huge part of it. I think it's really good advice for people, and the problem
Yeah.
is it's almost like experience is the name that everyone gives to their mistakes, and it takes like experience to realize that, right? That you've held it so tightly, and it was a performance decrement because it's almost a spiral. You go, I did this thing, and then I got injured, so I'm going to try harder and do more stuff so I don't get injured, and then it like cranks it and makes it worse and worse and worse
Right.
until
Yeah.
eventually you almost throw your hands up and go, oh bugger it, and then you go, hang on, I just performed really well. How'd that happen? And you
Yeah.
go, okay, I should probably do more of that, not more of the tightening the grip. So
Yeah,
um,
that's right. Yeah, it's certainly an experience, but something you've got to learn. And you've got to learn, like you said earlier, you only learn it through the experience and being told that as an 18-year-old when you just want to make it and you see what everyone else, you're in that comparative mode and, I'm working so hard. Why can't, I have my shot, that sort of feeling. And the, the interesting thing is that you get your shot and then you just want more anyway, right? Because we're humans, right?
yeah,
So then
yeah,
you're like, okay, fifth at London. Now I want to do this. I want podium next or whatever that may be. And then life gets in the way, or you may things happen. You get COVID, going to Valencia, and they're things that you can't control. And also, you've got to remind yourself that there's another race. There's always another race, and the elation you get from achieving your goal is amazing, but then it's also fleeting. So you've got to really kind of take the opportunity to celebrate that moment where you've done something pretty extraordinary and not forget about it, not just be so quick to move on, because the opportunity then to get that again is, it can take years and years. So
yeah.
just being in that moment and really recognizing that, if you miss something this time around, you potentially have it coming the next year or 2 years later, and it does help you stay a bit more grounded.
Yeah, the arrival fallacy is real. If I just get fourth, I'll be happier, or I'll be happy when I get fourth, and then it's third, and then it's first, and then it's like, well, I got to win multiple times. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
real. Bit more of a slightly side question. You mentioned still wanting to do Boston. Do you have a timeline on that? Do you have any ideas on when you want to do Boston, or maybe you can't talk about it because of negotiations with agents? But I'm sure.
Yeah, I can talk about it. Yeah, look, it's definitely the thing that's outstanding. So I had been, my goal last year, I've been focused on making Paris and, becoming the first Australian to be a 5-time Olympian in track and field. And everything, we threw everything into that, and I ran multiple qualifiers and had, this amazing build up. And so, when that opportunity didn't come around, despite all that, everything that we put on the table for that, it took a bit of time to process that and get through that trauma. But I think that, I've come out of that, in a different frame of mind, and I'm really just enjoying the decisions that we're making about what to do next and what experience we want to do. So I'm not chasing times. I'm also chasing fun experiences, because now I feel like I'm at the bonus round of my career now. So, and I think, how good would it be to, experience Boston? Because, I ran New York. I was really fortunate to get into New York. I think maybe I came eighth there, and I had such a fantastic experience. But I think, to our discussion earlier, I ran so much better than I thought I would in that race, because I actually had no pressure on any particular outcome, because my husband and I had been, we were at the end of building a house. And so we were exhausted. Our young man was still pretty young, and my parents thought I was insane starting a house build around the 2018 Commonwealth Games, and lucky we did, because I'm still running. But we started that, and it finished around about New York, and so I wasn't able to train as much as I would have normally trained, but I actually exceeded my expectations, because I didn't have the pressure that some of the other races that we put on ourselves for some of the other races. So I think Boston is going to be a similar experience when I have the opportunity. There's no discussion about that yet, because it's a bit too early, but yeah, perhaps next year might be a good year for it.
Well, let me know when you go. It's amazing. I've run Boston. It's really special. The people really care. It's point to point, which it will always have I just think there's a great marathons. You have to commute your way back. Yeah, real nuanced, special thing. But last question for me, at least, what does success in Sydney look like? Given all you've just talked to us about, I thought it would be remiss of me not to ask. What does success look like for you in Sydney?
I think Sydney for me is more about the celebration than where I finish. It's a pretty amazing field and a fantastic opportunity, to be, part of that field. There's obviously the Australian race as well, and there's myself, Leanne, Jess. There's quite a few women who are wanting to have an amazing day, and I think that any one of us could run super well, and we might all run super well together, and how good would it be if we're all together finishing and made it a pretty exciting race towards the end. So look, I'm really excited for the opportunity to run Sydney. Who knows what result I'll get out of it, but I'm pretty confident that it's going to be a pretty big celebration regardless of where I finish.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
Looking forward to seeing it. I'm a little jealous, because I'm South African, and Cape Town is also in the running to become a world marathon major, and Sydney snuck in there before that. So looking forward to see how that plays out. And
there was no sneaking, mate. It was all organization.
different starting points.
Well, I hear positive rumors around, it coming your way too. So that will mean I'll need to continue marathon running for a little longer.
Absolutely. But I want to thank you. I've got so many takeaways from this interview. Yeah, unbeknownst to you, I had a back operation 5 months ago, and I've been struggling with nerve pain, and I'm 40 now, and to me, it's running's gone, it's over. Triathlons, I don't know if I'm gonna ever cycle again, but you've just encouraged me to know that there is a better way, and there is opportunity in the future, and it's about being patient and doing the right things at the right time, and just taking the long view. So thanks for coming on here and sharing your story. Really appreciate that.
My pleasure. It's been great to meet you both, and let's keep in touch, and I'll continue to enjoy your episodes.
Oh, appreciate it. Thanks so much, Lisa.
There we go. Lisa Weightman. Thank you so much to Precision Fuel and Hydration, one of our partners on this podcast, for putting us in touch with her. I really, really love what I love about her is longevity. At 46 years old, to be able to still compete and run at this level is very, very impressive.
Yeah, I also think she's got really good perspective on her career and what it's given her. I think it's really cool. She's obviously really balanced, given family, work, those sort of things. So pretty inspiring for people in our listenership, probably, who are non-professional athletes, where it's it can be a little dislocating hearing from professionals, because you're like, oh, you don't know what it's like to have to balance work and family. And she's like, well, actually, I do. So 4 Olympics as well. Geez, it's impressive. So yeah, she's super tough. Almost always performs. It's super impressive.
We don't have anyone in the doctor's office this week. Maybe Julian Alfred. We should put her in there with a hamstring
Yeah.
injury.
Yeah, I mean hamstrings are funny. Like they don't happen to slow people. I make this joke all the time. Like I've never
I've
been
never had a hamstring injury in my
no,
life.
never been. I've never been a risk. You only see hamstring injuries in fast twitch people. I guess hamstrings. There's all sorts of things that can happen. Minor strains through to frank tears. You can have a tendon problem, etc., etc., etc. They get complex quickly. So I won't go into it. But not a good thing to have for a sprinter. Not uncommon to have for sprinters, but certainly not going to help you run fast anytime soon, particularly from a confidence standpoint. So, you're talking muscle injuries. Classically, you're talking 4 to 6 weeks. So she's now 4 weeks out of World Championships. I don't know when she did the hamstring, but she's borderline here. If she's not, there is a reality in which she's back training already and not ready to race. In which case, she's got a month of like really good training and then she can race. Maybe she's a chance. If she's anywhere behind that though, and she's not back to full training yet, you're like, it's going to be a bit hard.
What are we watching this weekend? I had a dismal sporting weekend last week because South Africa lost to Australia in one day in the cricket and the rugby, and then Manchester
in
United.
In the what, sorry?
In the rugby?
Oh. I was surprised you admitted that. Okay.
I was so depressed. But you gave me context to it, and you said, they didn't play their first. South Africa didn't play their first team. They're developing athletes here. It's going through the process. They'll be back this weekend and winning again. So I will be watching this.
Have
weekend
you seen that?
See.
Have you seen that team that they've put out for this week?
No.
Okay, well, there's a good chance they put 30 on Australia. I said that last week. They almost did in the first 5 minutes, in the first 20 minutes. They're going to dominate Australia this week. I'm sure of it. They're gonna calm it down a little bit. They're gonna, it's gonna be messy this weekend.
Well, that's what I'll be watching. I'll be watching us taking revenge on Australia in both the cricket and the rugby as well. We already won the ODI yesterday, first ODI in the cricket against Australia. And then I'll be watching, football is back. I'll be watching Manchester United versus Fulham, playing much better football so far this season. What are you watching?
Are they in Fulham? I should go and watch. That's across the river from me.
I think they are. Sunday afternoon, 4:30. Yeah, they're right in Fulham. That's
going to
Fulham.
absolutely torch my traffic around us. So anyway, I'll be watching the rugby, mate. If anything, rugby, bit of Diamond League, and that'll be about it. Not much else.
Cool. Thank you so much for listening, for downloading, for streaming. Please share this episode with a friend. It would greatly help us grow as we try to all become 1% better together. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to this podcast. David, thank you so much for putting this together. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate you as well. And have a good day.
We'll catch you on the next one.